My Airbnb eats the souls of good people. I act like a prick to save them. I gave up trying to explain the rules to the new people about 30 years ago. They never listened to me anyway, and they probably just leave nowadays. But if you're ever staying around Haworth, West Yorkshire, you might as well take this advice. Treat everyone you meet with disdain. Not just internally. The beings from the train can't read thoughts. Let them know you hate them. If you've got children with you, ignore them. Compassion towards them is risky, and the more they irritate the local townspeople, the more likely you are to escape the clutches of the damned. Leave our furnishings destroyed, and just to be safe, add any bodily fluids you're able to spare to the carpet. I inherited the role of custodian from my father, back before sat-nav, back when we still used to get the odd lost straggler passing through. Every time they'd smile at me, gratefully, when they drew up to my gate in the middle of the night, looking for refuge. The daft fuckers wouldn't take a hint when I told them renting out the shithole down from the bottom of the valley wasn't any trouble. They tell me their names, even when they were told I don't give a shit. And then, well, we'll get to that. There's a pair staying now with 2 kids. The twat in the tweed jacket tried to shake my hand when I passed him the keys. The mom even told the little girl to say, "Thank you," before I left. "It's lovely." The angelic brat told me, "You'll never stay anywhere better again," I said as a parting shot. They don't get it. By all accounts, they had a grand day out in town. Even had a jaunt to see the steam train. Those who know what's coming will have a good chuckle at that. From my house, you can see pretty much straight through their windows and hear conversations clear as crystal. I don't tell them this. You can tell who's got a chance by watching the lights. Good families spend their evenings in the living room, reading or playing games. I even put a copy of Monopoly in there to sow contempt between them. But too many of these fuckers actually love each other for it to make any difference. The ones who leave, souls intact, are the sort to drain a bottle of tequila in an hour and have a domestic that wakes half the town. If it's a family, you hear kids shouting and smacking the wood paneling until it splinters. The kids may or may not have a bottle of tequila to themselves. I don't always do this, but tonight I feel like giving them a fair chance. If I want to help, I do a couple of things. First, at about 11 o'clock, I'll walk close enough to the security light to trip it. Then, I'll wait until their conversation stops. Next, I'll play the sound of a vixen in heat from my phone. The twitchy ones don't like that. The country-loving, well-spoken folk don't seem to mind it. If I've gotten their attention, that's when I'll sidle up to their car and set off the alarm. If I can't manage the alarm, I'll just bang on it a few times, and that usually gets them going. Tonight I got nothing off them. Not that I thought it'll help. I tried the next step. At about 2 o'clock, I had to wander back over. You can climb the stone bricks on the side of the house fairly easily if you've had practice. I'd have a scratch of the single glazing with my long thumbnail, just enough to make it screech. Sometimes I like to space it out and do it in all of the bedrooms through the night. This time, I tried a few times on the kid's room. The little boy got up, and I heard him stomp towards me. There was a chance for these lot after all. Just a bit of the needle that'd start them raging, and keep the beings from the train away for another night. Long enough to get them angry tomorrow. Time for them to start hating the place. He twitched the curtains. I'd let him see my face. I kept my hood up, so he could see the ghoul every child has nightmares about. I heard his blood-curdling scream through the window pane, and his thunderous footsteps to the hall as I dropped down to the gravel below. Success, perhaps? Alas, no. Both his parents were in the room in minutes. They heard him out, and his dad even checked the window for monsters. They comforted him, and he was soon back to sleep. They trusted each other and loved each other in a way totally unsuited to the situation. For a moment, I could hear the couple chatting about keeping the doors open, just in case there really were any sounds worth worrying about. But I was done that night. There was no stopping the being in their harvest. I walked back up the hill to my house and lit a cigarette on the porch while we were waiting for the train to pull in. You won't find it on any schedules. You'll never hear it whistle, and you'll never see it steam. Unless you've already watched them in action, of course. Breathing in the smoke, I watched as the figures from the train floated down the hill towards the house, a collection of dead souls sired from the warm regards of strangers looking to collect new friends for their ranks. They coalesced around the walls, drowned out any sound or light as they let their evil seep in. I let out a long breath as I watched the fog of the beings grow 4 souls bigger and carry them off into their next stop. Where's that? I don't know. No gives 2 fucks. In the morning, I'll watch 4 bodies leave the house. They'll scream at each other, hurt each other, and they'll go off and hurt the rest of the world. I'll clean up the filth they left and wait for the next lovely group to stop by. You might wonder if I feel bad about any of this. Not really. My dad raised me to be like this. If I behaved any better, maybe that cloud would pop up to the hill a bit more. Who knows? Maybe they already have. I live alone. Or at least, I thought I did. I moved into a house last fall. A little cottage at the edge of town, tucked behind a curtain of pine trees and wrapped in silence. It was cheap, quiet, came with just enough creaks in the floorboards to feel lived in, but not haunted. I was grateful for that. I needed peace. It was the first place I've had to myself. No roommates, no boyfriends, no shared leases with passive chorus charts. Just me. I could finally buy the soap I liked, light candles that smelled like anything but pine, and leave my bras hanging off chairs without apology. I live alone. Or I thought I did. The first time it happened, I chalked it up to forgetting. A light was left on in the hallway when I swore I'd turned it off. A spoon in the sink I didn't remember using. Small things. Annoying, but explainable. And then it got stranger. I started waking up to the closet door cracked open. Just a sliver. Like someone had peeked in. Or out. I'd shut it and go to bed. And the next night, there it was again. This was repeated a few nights, until I finally stopped bothering to close it. One morning, I found a muddy footprint in the entryway. Just one set. Small. Really small. I didn't own shoes that size. The yard had been mown dry for weeks. I checked the locks. I checked them twice. Nothing was broken. Nothing stolen. Just the footprints leading to the basement door. I didn't go down there much. It smelled like earth and iron. There was a crawl space in the back that I never dared to look into. Too low to stand in, too dark to see. I kept it shut tight. Until one night, I heard humming. I was brushing my teeth. The soft sound at first, childlike, like a low tune. The same low tune, over and over again, echoing up through the vents. My blood ran cold. I froze, toothbrush in hand, and strained to listen. It stopped the moment I moved. I slept on the couch that night, with all the lights on. The next morning, the basement door was open. Wide open. But I didn't. I told myself it was stress, fatigue, or a dream maybe. People hear things all the time in old houses. That's all it was. I told myself that, over and over. Then, something changed. I came home from work. The hallway light was on again, but this time there was something new, written on the mirror in the fog of the bathroom. There were words. "Stop closing the door." I hadn't taken a shower that morning. The mirror shouldn't have fogged up. My stomach dropped. I backed out of the room like it might lunge at me. I slept in my car that night. This morning, when I went back inside, the house was calm, quiet, too quiet. But the kitchen table, where I always leave my keys, sat a small object. A child's tooth, still red at the root. I didn't call the police. I should have. I know that. But what would I have said? Hi, yes, someone might be living in my walls and left a baby tooth on my table. Oh, they write messages in fog and hum lullabies through the vents. I'm sure they would have rushed right over. So instead, I threw the tooth in the trash, grabbed the flashlight I kept in the junk drawer, and went down into the basement. The air down there was always colder than it should be. Not crisp like a refrigerator. It's a damp cold, like something breathing just behind the cinder block walls. Kind of cold that sticks to your bones and makes your joints ache. The crawl space is in the far end of the basement, behind the old oil tank. A low rectangle on the wall, just about 2 feet high. It used to be covered with plywood, nailed in haphazardly. But that morning, it was open, or rather, peeled back. I stared at the black rectangle, like it might blink. My flashlight shook in my hand. Then I got on my stomach, and I went in. The dirt floor was damp, and the smell hit me immediately. Decay, and something else. Something sweet and rotten, like a candy apple left too long in the sun. I crawled forward, light dancing off the exposed beams and cobwebs. There were scratch marks in the dirt, fingernails I think, a trail of them, leading deeper. That's when I saw the bed, just a pile of old blankets tucked under the foundation, but it had a shape, order. Next to it a small tin box with children's toys inside, broken plastic animals, crayons worn to the stub, and tucked off in the corner was a mirror, small and oval, the kind that belongs on a vanity. The glass was fogged. I wiped it off and nearly shat myself. There was a face behind me, pale, small, childlike, but wrong. The proportions weren't right. The eyes were too big, too glossy, and too still. The mouth was open, but no breath came out. I turned, my flashlight flickered, nothing. Just dirt. I crawled backwards fast enough to scrape my elbows raw. I slammed the plywood back over the entrance, nailed it shut, with shaking hands, and haven't gone down since. But now I hear them every night. 2 sets of footsteps. One light, one heavy, and sometimes, when I lie very still, pretending to sleep, I hear breathing under the floorboards, right beneath my bed. And the worst part? Last night, I found another message in the bathroom mirror. Are you my sister now? I don't sleep anymore. I try, I really do, but the breathing is louder, closer. It's no longer under the floorboards, it's in the walls. Sometimes I hear it crawl past my headboard, and the drywall gives a small crack as if something shifts inside. Last night, the hallway light turned on by itself, then off, then on again. Click, click, click. Like it was deciding. I finally called someone, not the cops. I know, I should have, but I didn't. His name is Darren, and he said he specializes in hard to explain problems. I didn't care how insane that sounded. I just needed someone else, anyone, to be inside the house with me. Darren showed up in the morning, with a suitcase full of gear, and a face that looked like I'd seen too much already.
I get a lot of these,
he said, stepping through the threshold.
but yours feels bad.
I agreed, and began explaining what was happening. The door, the crawl space, the tooth, all of it. But he didn't respond much, just nodded and started scanning the place. Room by room, EMF meter in hand, a little recorder clipped to his jacket. I followed him, too afraid to be alone in any room, even my own. After 2 hours of nothing, Darren paused outside the basement door. He looked at it and then me.
You said the face is down here?
I nodded nervously and opened the door. The smell hit us like a wall, damp, sweet, foul.
Something's dead down there,
he muttered. I wanted to run, but he flicked on his shoulder lamp and descended. I stood at the top of the stairs, cold sweat running down my back. A minute passed, then another. I called out, Darren? No answer, just a sound. It wasn't Darren, and it wasn't footsteps. It was dragging, like something being pushed slowly across the dirt floor. I backed away, not realizing I was holding the doorknob so tight my knuckles went white. I called for Darren to come back in one last hopeful attempt, and a voice floated up from the dark. It wasn't Darren's. It was weak and quiet, like a child's voice.
We're not finished playing.
Then the basement light flickered, and I heard giggling as if something ran off out of view. I slammed the door shut, and I hadn't opened it since. That was 3 days ago. The door to the basement is nailed shut now. I hear scratching from the other side sometimes, and sometimes I hear Darren's voice whispering through the vent, telling me to let him out. But it's not him. I know that. It can't be. Yesterday I went to leave, just walk away from the whole cursed house, but the front door wouldn't open. Every window shows something different when I look out. Sometimes it's night when it's supposed to be day. Sometimes it's not even my yard. Last night I woke up, and someone had tucked me in, folded the blanket, turned off the lamp, left a note on the pillow in a child's handwriting.
Play with us.
And this morning I could hear them again. The footsteps, walking in sync with me just behind the walls. One light, one heavy, and a third pair that sounded like boots. And now, I can hear breathing behind my mirrors. Don't eat the ants. I'm an exterminator. My client only had one rule. Don't eat the ants. Don't eat the ants. That was the first thing we were told. It was a bad infestation. Me and my buddy Mark were there to treat the place. We've been working for our extermination company since high school. 3 years. Looking back, it should have been obvious not to eat the ants. But not to Mark. Mark was the kind of guy that would drink a rotten carton of milk for $5. And if no one anteed up, he wouldn't be too mad. He liked the attention. Standing in the doorway, the guy who owned the place stared us both down. He repeated his instruction, "Don't eat the ants." He was a pale kid, kind of sweaty, thick glasses, a little bit of a nerd. He said in a real serious way too, like he was a doctor on one of those cheesy hospital shows where everyone's banging each other. He stared at us again, long and hard. Then he left us to do our thing. It was a mess inside, ants literally everywhere. On the walls, on the floor, everything was carpeted in ants. You couldn't walk around without hearing a crunching noise, like leaves in autumn. There was a weird smell too, but it wasn't a bad smell. It was almost good, sugary, like cookies from the oven. I was dusting chemicals around the edges of the room when I heard Mark call from the bedroom, "Yo, you gotta see this." I took my time. Mark had once been impressed by a bowl of Kraft mac and cheese that had added bacon bits to. He called it fine dining. Whatever he was looking at, it could wait till I was finished. "Dude, seriously, come on. It's not like last time." I sighed and finished up my wall. I went to see what the hell he wanted to show me. He was right. It was gross. Ant eggs stacked about a foot high off the ground in the corner of the bedroom. It looked like a pile of quinoa. Worker ants were growing the stash, adding one egg at a time around the edges. On top of it was the biggest, fattest queen ant I had ever seen in my life. Must have been the size of my thumb. Could hear it clicking its pincers. The cookie smell was extra strong there. I shuddered. Let's bug bomb it. Later. Dare me to eat an egg?" I looked at Mark. He shrugged. "Eggs ain't ants, you dumbass. $12. This is stupid. $10. 5? Mark grinned and took a humongous egg from the stack. He sniffed it and grinned. "Smells kinda good." Suddenly he yelled and waved his hand around. The queen had somehow latched itself onto his finger. He shook it off and shoved his hurt thumb into his mouth, sucking off the blood. He stamped the queen ant into a stain on the ground. He probably would have spit on it too, if his thumb wasn't in the way. "You can still back out." I folded my arms. "Fucking shut up." Mark composed himself and made a big show of holding the egg over his gaping jaw. I swear, I saw the little white bean pulse and wiggle around like something had been moving inside it. I almost told Mark to stop, but he needed to learn his actions had consequences, so I kept quiet. Mark held the egg above him for a solid 5 seconds, then let it drop into his gullet. He grimaced, swallowed it whole, and stuck out his tongue. All done. "You're disgusting." Mark laughed. "Where's my $5? You spent it last week when I covered your Wendy's. You still owe me $3. Mark got mad and tried to wrestle me to the ground. I got him into a headlock and he stopped struggling. We finished up the job, dropped 2 bug bombs, one to do the job, the second for luck, and left their number in case they had any more problems. In the car, I caught a whiff of sugar as Mark entered into the passenger side. The next time I saw Mark was on Monday. I hadn't heard from him in 3 days. But that was just Mark. He liked to get shit-faced on the weekends and go to Dave & Buster's. He called it his me time. I knocked on his door at 7 a.m. to pick him up for work. He was late, which was normal for Mark. It took him almost 15 minutes to answer the door. He opened it. I did a double take. He did not look good. Mark usually had a hangover Monday morning, but this was especially bad. He was pale, like a ghost, sweating all over, and had dark circles under his eyes, so thick they looked drawn on with marker. He had held his stomach like it was causing him pain. It was kind of bulging out, like a pregnant lady just starting to show. The smell, BO and beer mostly, but there was something else too. Sugar. Not sure I can work today. Mark leaned against the doorframe. I told him not to worry about it. Mark had tried to cut work before, but those performances were paltry compared to this. I told him to get some rest and text me when he felt better. At the time, I had completely forgotten about the egg. I thought that was just Mark being Mark. I feel bad about it now. At the end of the week, I got another call from Mark. He needed some help with a bug issue at his place, since he was too sick to take care of it himself. I was starting to worry about the guy. On the way over, I bought chicken soup and Pepto-Bismol from Walmart. Mark loved their chicken soup. He said it reminded him of his mom's. Mark couldn't even answer the door when I arrived. I had to let myself in with the doormat key. The sweet smell was stronger than last time, like breathing in pure sugar water. I had to put my shirt over my nose to get used to it. I went into the bedroom. Mark was laying down on his bed, holding his stomach and groaning. It definitely had bulged out another inch. His body was covered in a layer of clear, syrupy liquid that was getting stuck to his clothes and sheets. He had some sores on his neck and arms that looked like burst pimples. They looked red and infected. The sweet smell was strong next to him. I had to breathe through my mouth. I tried to give him the chicken soup and Bismol, but he made a face. Not hungry. You sure you don't want a doctor? Just shut up and take care of the ants. Mark pointed at the wall. Leading up to his window, there was a double line of ants that would wound down the floor and disappear into the crack into the baseboard. There was another line leading from the door to his room, to underneath his desk. And there was a third line emanating from a hole in the ceiling that led down to the window again. Mark didn't live in the nicest part of town, but this was weird. He had never had ants before. I set up traps, sprayed some chemicals, and told Mark I'd be back to check on him. That night, Mark called me twice. Once at 1 a.m. and again at 2 a.m. I slept through both calls. When I got up later, I saw the notifications. Still groggy, I put the phone to my ear and listened. The first call was Mark groaning that he wanted to go to the 24-hour clinic, but he needed me to drive him down because he didn't want to pay for an Uber. Good old Mark. I started to fall asleep again as I pressed play on the second voicemail. A few seconds in, and I was wide awake. Mark was screaming. It was a horrible sound, all garbled like he was underwater. He was yelling that his skin was crawling, that everything burned. He kept saying, "I'm ants, I'm ants." I heard something that sounded like 1,000 sheets of paper crinkling, and the message cut off. I ran to my car and sped over to his apartment. It was quiet when I got there. I didn't hear screaming from behind the door, just a strange rustling, like sand pouring. I unlocked the door with the doormat key and opened it slow and steady. Ants. Everywhere. It was worse than the place we had treated. There wasn't a single surface that wasn't covered in a tidal wave of ants. The walls, the counters, they even ran across the ceiling, falling down like crusty raindrops. And the smell, so sweet, like melted powdered sugar mixed with a bowl of maple syrup. I stepped inside cautiously, feeling the crunch of ant bodies beneath my feet. Where had they all come from? Mark? I made my way to the bedroom. brushing fallen ants from my shoulders and trying to keep them from crawling up my shoe and into my pants. I got to the doorway and looked inside. I almost threw up. Mark was laying twisted on his bed. His arms and legs were arranged in odd angles, like they had been writhing around and suddenly frozen. His jaw was slack, and he was staring up at the ceiling with blank eyes. His skin was covered in a honey-like substance, thick and dripping. His body was torn in places with long, ragged gashes. Blood soaked into the mattress. His ribs and organs were exposed, cold, purple and twitching. But that wasn't the worst part. I knew where the ants had come from now. I watched ants burst out of his skin, tearing through the layers of his body to get to the surface. They emerged from the inside in organized double lines. They were all over him, working, cutting out tunnels and carrying bits of his intestines into their jaws. They crawled through the gaps in his eyes, his nose, his ears. Anywhere there was a hole, it looked like it was an ant farm, except instead of dirt, it was flesh. Everything on him was filled with furrows, and bunched up areas filled to the brim with ants. I moved my eyes to his stomach. It was ripped open like a plastic shopping bag. What was in the center made my heart stop. Eggs, piled a foot high. At its top was another humongous queen ant. I stared at Mark's body for a long time. It took a while for me to believe it was real, but just as I was coming to terms with it, I had a weird thought. The sweet smell wasn't as strong anymore. Now it's almost delicious. I breathed in deep. It made my stomach gurgle. I hadn't eaten breakfast. I was hungry. Those eggs, they glistened with Mark's juices, and my mouth started watering. I wondered what they tasted like. I stepped forward into the room and slowly reached for the pile. Something on the wall shifted and got my attention. A chaotic pile of ants slowly organizing itself. It slowly formed shapes, then letters, then words. Those words spelled out a single message. Don't eat the ants. Love, Mark. I woke up from whatever the smell was doing to me. I plugged my nose and ran out. Ants fell all over me as I went. One or two slipped into my mouth. It tasted like my grandma's sugar cookies. I almost swallowed. I spit them out forcefully and scraped off the gritty body parts that remained with my fingers. I got to the door, shaking my clothes and doing a stupid dance to make sure no ants stayed on me. It wasn't enough. I stripped down to my underwear and burned my clothes in a nearby trash can. Naked and hiding in my car, I called the police. I never stopped plugging my nose. I had to convince the operator that I wasn't a prank caller. Eventually the police came and took care of the whole thing. Another extermination company came in and got rid of the ants. I wanted to quit my job, but I couldn't. I wasn't exactly qualified for anything else, and I had bills to pay. I got over it after a while. Lots of bugs to kill other than ants. Things went back to normal. Kind of. My ant traps have been kind of filled up quick recently. Went through 2 boxes in a week. Might just be the weather though. It's getting cold, and sometimes I think I smell that sweet scent in my apartment. But it never lasts too long. I do breathe nice and deep when it happens. It's comforting, and I did notice last night a line of ants coming through my bedroom window. Double file. They looked tasty. I'm sure it's nothing. All of our futures. I know you don't know me, but listen to my story. I collect cursed objects, or at least objects rumored to be. These glasses were said to have killed the last wearer. Now I understand. When I put them on, the whole universe opened up to me. I saw the breadth and depth of reality, the beauty and violence of the world's most thunderous waterfalls, the awe and silence of the furthest stars. These glasses didn't just show what is, they showed what could be. It was in those futures that I met you. I knew you intimately the moment I saw you. Your every passion, your every strength, and I knew that I loved you. Your kindness and consideration, your gentle smile, the way you would tease me as I teased you. I saw our wedding day and lived through it 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. And in all of our futures, we were happy. Through these glasses, I saw a million realities, and I knew I'd love you in a billion more. But I'm sorry, my love. I understand now why these glasses are cursed. The ecstasy of omniscience. To know, completely. Every joy yet to be is too much to bear. My will is not strong enough to live in a present where we are still strangers. For each hour I sit here, 1,000 blissful more embrace me. It feels as if though eons of paradise exist between every stroke of my pen, as my body withers like those before me, rotting in this chair. But I must write you this letter, my love, as I would have done millions upon millions of times more in the futures now lost. For that is the true curse of these glasses, to reveal every possibility, except the one that will come to pass. Forgive me, I have robbed us all of our futures. But you, my love, please cherish yours.